Well, if it's cold and snowy outdoors where you're at, we thought we'd try something a little different today and bring some Florida sunshine to you. And as you can see, I'm dressed the part with my tropical shirt. We tried to get Barbara to wear a grass skirt, but her excuse was it hadn't come in the mail yet. So we're going to share with you today a little bit about tropical fruits and vegetables, some of the things that you might see in the grocery store but are a little bit hesitant to buy because you may not know what they are or how to prepare them, and sometimes the cost is a little bit prohibitive too. Barbara, let's talk first about the one on the end here, and that's, of course, papayas. And those are a tropical fruit, and something interesting that you had mentioned to me was the seed, and we've got one cut open here as well.
Yeah, the seed is edible, and you can use it in some kinds of salad dressings. You can also sprinkle them on salads. They have a flavor that's somewhere of a cross between pepper, watercress, and nasturtium. So it's an interesting thing you might want to try, rather at least give it a try once before you throw them down the drain.
Right. And what about the flesh or the pulp itself? How would we use some of those?
Most commonly, they're simply eaten raw because they are so flavorful and juicy once they do ripen up and soften. You can soften them if you get them a little bit on the firm side by simply leaving them at room temperature, speeding it up by putting them in a brown paper bag and closing it down.
And the green one that we've got here is actually firm, like you mentioned, where the yellow ones are ripened. I've heard of people using them as substitute in cereal, where instead of strawberries and blueberries.
Yeah, or bananas too. They would work real well that way. You could add them to salads to stretch them, since in Oklahoma you might not, every member of your family may not be able to have their own. You can divide them into fruit salads and fruit plates and fruit pizzas and all kinds of things along that line.
What about nutrition-wise? What do we have with those?
Very high in vitamin A. Also a good source of potassium. Most fruits and vegetables are good sources of potassium, so that'll be fairly common as we go down the line today.
Okay. And the next thing we have is related to the citrus, and you've grown up with kumquats.
Right. My dad used to get them in his Christmas box from the company every year, so when I see them I think of Christmas time.
Okay, and again, it's a citrus grown in the tropical areas. And the interesting thing I think about these are people are used to peeling oranges and grapefruits and those kinds of things, but we can actually eat those.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about them, and I'll sample one while you're doing that.
Well, when you use them, you can use them just as grapes. You can go ahead and eat the peel and all. If you find the peel's a little bit firm, you can blanch them in about 20 seconds in boiling water, then ice them down real quick again. They do tend to have seeds in them, just like other citrus fruits do, so you may need to watch out for that, but we do have grapes that we have to do that with also.
Right.
They have the same nutritional benefits that other citrus fruit do, high in vitamin C, also potassium.
And eating the peeling is going to be a little bit more nutritious too in this case, won't it?
That peel, that white part under the peel, is high in fiber. In fact, that's one of the sources, not necessarily just with kumquats, but with all citrus, for the pectin that we use when we make jams and jellies. And that's one of the water-soluble fibers that people are interested in eating.
So again, that one's pretty common in some of the grocery stores that we've found too.
Adding that to salads would be a real good choice. You could slice them and they'd be a real pretty addition to a salad.
Colorful too. Now the next one that we've got here is called chayote, and that's a tropical vegetable, but it will actually grow here in Oklahoma if the season is long enough, and it's grown really very similar to squash, any of our cucurbit crops, and we've even seen these germinate right out of the vegetable itself and plant the whole thing. But how would we use it since it's grown like cucurbits? Would it be a substitute?
It will substitute for almost any kind of summer squash. It takes longer to cook, whereas a zucchini or a yellow squash may take 5 to 10 minutes to cook to the stage of doneness you want. These are probably going to take 20 to 25 minutes, so you need to adjust that on your recipes. But it'll substitute for most any of them.
And if it's grown in your vegetable, you want to remember too that it is pretty vining, similar to a pumpkin, so it requires quite a bit of space. So a lot of success with growing these in greenhouses even too.
One of the things that's different with these, with the other things, you pretty much are going to look for something that's tender when you squeeze it. With these, the harder they are, the better when you're picking them out.
Right, and they'll get pretty good size and are very productive, just like zucchini is too. So they have to be careful. What about as far as stir frying and those kinds of things? Is that probably the most common way?
Yeah, that sautéing is also extremely common with it. Just like people fry zucchini and yellow squash, doing the same kind of thing with that would work out.
The next one is one of my favorites. It's a tropical fruit called carambola or star fruit. And we've got one here that we'll cut open and slice it, so you'll see why it gets the name star fruit. And the reason is after it's sliced, You can see that actually the shape of a star, so it's very attractive. It's a nice flavor. You can eat it raw like this too, and I like this one because it has a tart flavor.
They come two different ways. They can either be real sweet or they can be real tart, and you really can't tell until you cut it open and taste it. Some producers will tag them because the difference is based on variety, not how ripe it is so much. So sometimes you'll find them tagged tart or sweet, but most of the time you just taste test to find out which one you got.
And of course, the yellow or the color, even some of the edges are browning a little bit. That's closer to the ripening period too.
One of the nice things about this is you eat the peel and all. You don't have to, again, try and peel it, so it's very fast. Slicing it real thin because they can run $3 or more a piece in Oklahoma, and then mixing it in with a fruit salad or on a fruit plate so that everybody gets one piece rather than an entire one by themselves. The tart ones work real well as a complement to meats and poultry.
Okay. Nutritional wise, again, we're talking
vitamin A, vitamin C, and potassium, real good sources of all of those.
Okay, great. So this one is a real nice one to decorate, but there's another term for that, I understand. Garnishing.
Yes.
And the next one that we have is the avocado. And this was grown in Florida, and they have several shapes of varieties that they have down there. This one is referred to as the cannonball variety, and again, it's big, beautiful color and everything. It's a little bit different from some of the other ones we see on the West Coast just because of the variety itself. What about the avocado? That's kind of frustrating for some people as well to prepare.
It is a fruit, and one of the frustrating things is whether or not you should eat it or not because it's high in fat, and it's really the only fruit we have that's high in fat. The nice thing about it is the kind of fat that it contains is high in monounsaturates. The problem with blood cholesterol levels and blood triglyceride levels, first of all, come with eating too much fat, but then within that fat component, eating too much saturated fat. So that the monounsaturates and polyunsaturates tend to be better choices that we need to have higher percentages of the amount of fat we eat come from those. And so this is a good choice for that reason.
For the sake of time, we couldn't show you recipes on all of our tropical fruits and vegetables, but Barb did bring along a recipe using avocados. What are we going to make today?
Well, this one's an avocado vinaigrette, and it's something a little bit different than the guacamole that most of us use. We do have an avocado here, one of the other half. We use about a medium one or half of a large one. We cut this one into fine pieces. If it was a little bit riper, we would have mashed it a little bit better. If you get into this stage, what you can do is put your avocado in the bottom of a flour bin or inside of a brown paper bag and close it down, and that'll hold the gas around it, and it can ripen it up overnight even.
Put an apple in with it, will that help?
That can help some, or a banana too, but even just keeping the gas that it produces itself around it will help. We're going to add a half a cup of vinegar, and in this case we're using balsamic vinegar. You could use rice wine vinegar, you could use cider vinegar, whichever kind you happen to have. A third of a cup of chicken broth. Now you'll notice we're not going to add any kind of fat to it because the avocado itself has got the fat content that we would need. We have some garlic that we'll squeeze into here. That I just added was a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce. In this case we're using a white Worcestershire, but you could use whichever color you have. Squeeze our garlic in there a little bit and knock it off. We have a half a teaspoon of dried oregano and a half a teaspoon of dried basil, a half a teaspoon of lemon pepper, and a fourth of a teaspoon of dry mustard. Now these we then just blend together real well, and you can see it's a little bit runny because we weren't able to mash our avocados, which would help thicken it up, and then this then becomes a salad dressing. It's nice if you can do something like this a little bit ahead of time so that the flavors have a chance to blend. Using the vinegar will keep the avocado from turning dark, which is one of the big problems. And we only used half of our avocado today, and so you'll notice that we left the seed in the other half. And they don't know why, but for some reason the seed, something in the seed will help keep that from turning dark so that you can just rub what's left exposed with some lemon juice, or lime juice is always a favorite with avocados as well, and that'll help keep it from turning dark. If you mash the rest of the pulp, you can bury the seed in there, and that'll help prevent that from turning dark too.
Okay, so we just used it as a salad dressing then. And will this store pretty good too?
Yeah, because it's got the amount of vinegar in it, the avocado will not turn dark, and it'll be fine.
Okay, well, some great ideas, and we hope that you'll not be so leery and maybe experiment a little bit with some of the tropical fruits and vegetables that show up. And we'd like to thank our good friends at J.R. Brooks & Son out of Homestead, Florida, who has sent up the tropical fruits and vegetables for us to try. And as usual, if you'd like the recipe here, you can write to us at Oklahoma Gardening or contact your county extension service. And maybe next time, Barbara, we can get you in your grass skirt when it comes in, so you'll want to stay tuned for that. And we hope you'll have a bright, warm, sunny day and try some of these tropical fruits.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.